Hey everybody, it's Sergeant Tony, and today I'm talking to you about something that, a question that I get asked a lot, and that is, am I too old to start exercising? Am I too old to start exercising? You may anticipate what the answer would be given that I'm making a video about this question. If the answer to the question, am I too old to start exercising, if the answer is, yes, you're too old, well, this would make for a pretty short video, wouldn't it? But that's not the answer. The answer is, you are not too old to start exercising. Let me tell you about something that might encourage you and is a source of great data for those of us involved in the social sciences and exercise wellness, and that is the Harvard Longitudinal Study. The Harvard Longitudinal Study was begun in the early 1930s at Harvard University among incoming freshman males. There were no freshman females. Harvard didn't accept females at the time. So the study recruited those freshmen and brought them in, and they surveyed these young men, asked them a variety of questions about health, wellness, finances, family relationships, sense of well-being, sense of happiness, all of those kinds of things, and then interviewed them again in 1962. Now, the Harvard Longitudinal Study is an ongoing study. It's going on now. The study has had a number of different directors, as you might imagine, but it's an ongoing study. Let me tell you what happened in 1962. In 1962, they took those same guys that they had in the early 1930s and they surveyed them, again, asking them all kinds of questions about health and wellness and sense of well-being and happiness and finances and all of those things. What they found was that those men who were active in 1962 had a lower rate of mortality than the general public, those that did not exercise, those who were not active in the general population. They had the men who were active in 1962 had a lower level, a lower rate of mortality. As you might imagine, those men in 1962 who were not active, well, they had the same rate of mortality as anyone else in the population who was inactive. Now, fast forward to 1977. In 1977, they took these same men and surveyed them again, asking them the same kinds of questions as before. And they found this: those men who were active in 1962, but were inactive in 1977, now had the same higher rate of mortality than those that had not exercised, not been active at all. At all. Now here's the good news. Those men in 1962 who were not active, who were inactive in 1962, in 1977, if they were active in 1977, they had the same lower rate of mortality as those who had been exercising and been active the whole time. So the answer to the question about, am I too old to start exercising? Of course, the answer is no, you are not too old. Now, granted, you might have to start slower, and that would always be my recommendation. My advice as a fitness professional is that you always start at the beginning, that you start any kind of exercise or any kind of regimen or any kind of anything slowly and you build up. That's how the body acclimates to things over time. You build up. But the answer to the question is, you are not too old to start exercising. If you found any value in what I'm doing, these videos, be sure and click on the subscribe button, and there's a little bell. If you'll also click on the bell will give you a notification every time I upload a video so that you don't miss anything. All right, see you next time. Well, it looks like that next time was actually this time, because as I looked over what I had recorded earlier, I realized that I'd left out a couple of things that really needed to be attached to this whole video. The Harvard Longitudinal Study that we talked about, great study, full of all kinds of data that all of us in the social sciences and those of us involved in health and wellness can glean a ton of things from. One of the things that when I talked about the guys that were interviewed in 1962 and then again in 1977, and I drew the comparison that those that were active in 62 had a lower rate of mortality. Those same guys who were active in 62 but were inactive in 77, they then had a higher rate of mortality, the same as anybody else. But those guys in 62 who were inactive but were active in 77, had become active, they had lowered their mortality rate to the level that would be consistent with someone who had been active the whole time. And that kind of brings me to something that I needed to have said before, and that is, you can't bank fitness. I wish you could. I wish I could some way or another bank all of the workouts and all of the exercise that I've done through the years and put it in a bank, and that it draws interest, and that I don't have to worry about being fit, or I don't have to worry about exercising. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff anymore. But the problem is I can't. The deposit that I make today is really only good for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days. After that, I've got to make another deposit. And if you don't exercise on a regular basis, then the body is a wonderful, efficient machine, and it will start to eliminate redundancies. So the muscle that you build in strength training, if you're not continually doing strength training, your body will then acclimate to the lowest level of activity that it's doing. So if you're not exercising, if all you're really doing is sitting around, and quite honestly, that's what a whole lot of us are doing these days during this pandemic, during this lockdown. A lot of us are sitting around a lot more than we would have. But if that's all that you're doing, if that's all that you require your body to do is just, sit, well then your body, your muscles will then shrink. The body will start to eliminate the redundancies, and then you won't have the strength that you formerly had. So the point really needs to be made is, not only do you need to start, you're not too old to start. If you're breathing, if you're watching this right now, then you're able to do something. You may have to start at the very beginning. You may have to start with the easiest of exercises, a very casual walk around the block, or some kind of calisthenics, something like what I do in our program, but something that you're doing less of in an effort to build up. And that's what happens to all of us. If I happen to get sick, or if I happen to get injured and I can't do anything for several weeks, when I go back to it, I'm just going to tell you, when I go back to it, it sucks. It sucks to get started back. But you know what the alternative to sucking when you go back? If you don't go back, things get really bad after that. Things really start to suck after that. So what I want to, the couple of points that I wanted to make sure that we all understood is, you're not too old to get started. So that's great news. You're not too old to get started, so great news there. But once you get started, and you're going to get started if you haven't already, you're going to keep at it, at least 3 to 4 workouts per week. And if you've been paying attention, I talk a lot about the 5 points of fitness, and I'll make a video specifically for that, the 5 points of fitness, so that you can stay on track and make sure that you're hitting all of those. But you have to continue it. So there's the good news. The good news is that if you get active and stay active, not only does the Harvard Longitudinal study talk about the level of fitness that we get, and the lower rate of mortality, but it also talks about how that fitness makes us happy. That happier people are people who exercise. Now, do they exercise because they're happy, or are they happy because they exercise? Are happier people more likely to exercise? Well, those are some questions we can still talk about. But the point being is, people who exercise tend to be happier people. All right, and again, if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and subscribe and click on the bell icon so that you'll get a notification whenever I upload a new video. Appreciate it. See you next time.